The president threatening even more tariffs, and that's against warnings about a Trump recession. We have seen the retaliation continue. That's why it's called a trade war. And these are countries that we usually do not approach anything like an economic war with, let alone real wars. We are talking about longstanding American allies. Today, the news from Canada and the EU, billions of dollars of new tariffs, ranging from textiles, water heaters, beef, bourbon, many key American products. The impacts are immediate. The stock market continues a volatility that is driven by, partly at least, these Trump moves. We've seen that as almost a uniform opinion, and I'm going to show you some Wall Street Journal and other reporting on that in a moment. But today, in the last few hours, stocks are mostly flat. That comes, though, after a 10% slide, which the markets have not regained. Business leaders say that even if you were open-minded to some of what Trump wants to do, what the goals may be, this has been confusing, incompetent, and at times downright chaotic. And a top Trump aide who's been running point on this stuff, the Commerce Secretary, when asked about whether we could be heading into a recession and whether all of this would be worth it, he gave an answer that was as astounding for its economic claim as it is for its political tone-deaf positioning. Take a look.
Will these policies be worth it if they lead to a recession, even a short-term recession?
These policies are the most important thing America has ever had.
So it is worth it.
It is worth it.
Quote, it is worth it. That is what a gaffe looks like in real time. Number one, from Donald Trump on down, not even the supporters of this trade war, this tariff policy, claim that they want to dive into a recession. You think about what America's been through from pandemic on and inflation on. No one in this last election cycle was asking for policies that would increase the odds of recession. The fact that I even have to say that as a partial fact check or context about what a U.S. official in charge of the economy is saying is itself wild. But second, politically, we've never seen this attitude towards a potential recession. Not from the Commerce Secretary Lutnick and not from Donald Trump himself, who over the weekend failed to calm markets by basically saying, hey, we'll see what happens, and we might have to buckle up for some tough stuff. Now, why does this seem like such an extreme, hard-edged economic version of Trumpism, even more hardcore than really the economic agenda of the first Trump term? Well, one of the answers relates to something you probably know about if you follow the news, which is many of the moderating influences from law and the Justice Department to economics that we're talking about right now to foreign policy. Some of those folks who were around the so-called adults in the first term, most of them are gone. What's left are people who, after an insurrection and all those indictments and all those other Trump problems, the people who still stand 100 with everything Donald Trump has been exposed to be, from ethics to policy.
There are a lot of unsettled people.
Sure. Let's first of all put this marker down. To the extent that the media fuels the recession, inflation kind of talk, that's going to push us into recession and inflation. Because what it does,
President Trump is the one that said that he couldn't rule it out, not me.
Let me just finish the thought here. My point is simply that there's a lot of people's hair on fire now, which is interesting because the last jobs report we got on Friday was robust. It was a robust report.
It's like 150,000 jobs.
Yeah, that's a good number.
That's what we're hearing from the White House. Well, let me tell you what they're saying today over at the Journal. Trump behaves as if his manhood is implicated because a foreign nation won't take his nasty border taxes lying down. And they continue on, which is why I showed you what they've been saying diplomatically, perhaps, for some weeks. Quote, we said from the beginning that this North American trade war is the dumbest in history, and we were being kind. Well, Mr. President, you done got the Journal mad now. But, of course, they're mad about something real. Sometimes, I've told you, all these bankers and Wall Street elites are following these quarterly earnings and other numbers that they care about for their investments, which the vast majority of Americans don't even benefit from, and that sometimes are in tension with labor and employee situations, right? Some of these companies, they make money by cutting jobs. Here, the Wall Street Journal, the investor elites actually are right now, at least for this moment, kind of on the same side of a lot of workers who don't think a recession or a trade war will help the workers of this country. And the economic fallout has Americans paying the price. A job is a job, remember. So as Trump and Musk cut the government, they're cutting jobs. There's many conservative attacks on government jobs specifically, the so-called bureaucrats, as Elon Musk might put it, but he's still slashing the total number of employed Americans in a haphazard way. Analysts note that if you want strong U.S. employment numbers, many of those ousted workers have to shift to apply for private sector jobs. That affects the overall job market. If they're not absorbed, the overall job market gets worse, partly in relation to Trump and Musk cutting jobs. You don't need an economics textbook for that part. These costs are hitting veterans, teachers, and students. There's cuts to weather and environmental safety staff. This hits all states, including the red states that back Trump, where you have over 970,000 federal workers in just those states alone. Republicans have noticed GOP politicians pleading with Trump to just at least stop these cuts in their own district. A classic not in my backyard, selfish sort of political survival mechanism, which Axios and others are reporting on so people can see, oh, you don't want it in your backyard, why should it be in my backyard? That's a type of political weakness, of course. Or there's public colleges, long a point of pride and, frankly, patriotic, populist opportunity in our country. State schools often enable the highest share of students to get to college. They have admissions programs, as you can tell from any sports match that you watch, game, set, match, where there are sometimes tens of thousands of current students because the admissions programs admit more people than the smaller, say, private Ivies. Now, President Trump cracking down on funding for universities, and he started with some of those big top research institutions. On this program, we just heard from a professor at Musician about the unifying role that colleges can play. That was last night as we learned about these cuts and the clear signs that the Trump administration wants to go further. What I'm showing you on your screen is relevant in the news and government tonight. If it looks a little out of pocket, please don't blame the messenger or the news. You are looking at the wrestling executive that Donald Trump tapped to run the Department of Education, Linda McMahon. Whatever her business qualifications, she's not an expert on federal education policy or procurement. She's known more for her ability to learn and perform in the ring, as she was doing right here. But it turns out they don't want her doing federal education policy. She's a placeholder running this department that Trump wants to eliminate. And they just took that huge step this week, ousting half of the staff of the Department of Education, closing major field offices. And the former executive of that wrestling group, McMahon, says she is there, again, these are her words, to shut the whole thing down like Trump wants as long as they can get Congress to agree. So listen to what their plans really are amidst the quite understandable protest and pushback.
That was the president's mandate, this directive to me, clearly is to shut down the Department of Education.
Save our schools! Save our schools!
We want our tax dollars to educate our kids.
Yeah.
Not further line the pockets of Trump's cronies.
Thank you to my public education because I'm not stupid and I know better.
We know we'll have to work with Congress, to get that accomplished. But what we did today was to take the first step of eliminating what I think is bureaucratic bloat.
There can be no democracy without a free, universal public education.
That's the voice of the cuts and the voices pushing back. Now, there are many Trump actions that are extreme and unprecedented and are even being halted in court tonight as potentially unlawful. This talk, though, about shutting down entire agencies predates Donald Trump, to be clear. It goes back a long way in GOP politics. You might remember Rick Perry ran on basically ending not one, not two, but three agencies, which you'd think you'd have a strong feeling about if you really wanted to eliminate that many jobs in entire agencies, although he infamously struggled to remember which three.
The third agency of government, I would do away with the education, commerce, and let's see. I can't. The third one I can't. Sorry. Oops.
Oops. It was seen as a gaffe at the time. It was a moment that hurt Perry among Republicans. He was still running in the Republican primary. But by the time Donald Trump took over this same party, Rick Perry was back in the spotlight. I want to remind you, Donald Trump appointed him to run one of his supposedly hated agencies marked for elimination, the Energy Department. Just as Trump has tapped McMahon now to run an agency they both say they want to eliminate. Let's take them at their word here. They're not saying they want the government to run better or more efficiently with regard to these entire agencies. They are saying they want to end it. No federal energy oversight, no national education leadership, a gutting of the expertise and the people, which has guided two things that, as a factual matter, Americans generally rely on: energy and public education. And I'm not really chuckling because it's funny. I'm chuckling because it's outlandish. They're saying if they can get away with it, no mosques at the federal level. Get rid of the public servants, the administrators, the teachers, all connected to this funding. And why? Why? Because Donald Trump is empowering self-interested billionaires and, respectfully, forgetful politicians who think it's really cool or sounds politically good to disrupt and destroy things, at least when they can remember which thing they want to destroy.